on this Christmas Eve. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The big headline of the day, of course, 4.3% GDP growth in the third quarter of this year. Trumponomics is back and the country is indeed booming. 4% growth is really, really good. Nobody saw that coming. We'll talk with David Bahnsen, who I had scheduled for other reasons, about that number in hour number 2 today. I got Dr. Michael Oren from Israel in hour 3. I got Eli Lake, Admiral Mark Montgomery, David Drucker. But I want to start by doing two things. I'm going to beat up on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in just a minute, big target there, and on the DFL, and on the state government of Minnesota, and maybe Chad the Elder, maybe everybody in Minnesota, the Northern Alliance of Bloggers. I know you're up there, Mitch. I know you're still at it. I've been on AM 1280, the Patriot, for 25 years, so I know my way around the Gopher State. But first, I got to settle a dispute. A lot of people online have been saying if Andrew Breitbart was alive, he would say X. Now, I knew Andrew. Andrew is a friend of mine. I worked with Andrew Breitbart. He would come to the studio. He would bring along people that worked for him. People, well, I'll tell you about them in just a moment. And so, Andrew, I was really quite pleased when the last CPAC he was able to attend before the tragic end of his life occurred. Cut number 2. Andrew Breitbart at
Everybody
CPAC
asks
in
me,
12.
why do you retweet? Yeah, why do you do that? I can't tell you how many people I admire. And in fact, there's almost no one in the world who I respect more than Hugh Hewitt. And he took me aside the other day and he said, I don't think you should be doing that, Andrew. I don't think you should be doing that. Well, Professor Hewitt, on this issue, I disagree. Because they've held over...
Okay, so I just want you to know, Andrew and I would talk about stuff because we have different approaches. But he would, boy, did he have my back during Swift Boat and John Kerry's Magic Hat. And Andrew is a good man and a genius, actually. So when I hear people say, Andrew would have thought, I don't fill in that blank because I didn't know him that well. But I'll tell you who did. The 3 people you listened to on that, hate to say it, Larry O'Connor. Hate to say it, Kurt Schlichter. I really don't hate to say it for Kurt. Kurt's filling in for me after Christmas for a few days so I can get back to the West Coast. And Dana Loesch, who I don't know very well, but Dana has the goods. Those 3 worked with Andrew, knew Andrew. Larry would come with Andrew to the studio, and Andrew would appear on my program back when he was just getting Breitbart started. Those 3 people, Larry, Dana, and Kurt. So Kurt will be here next week, and Larry will probably call in. O'Connor's always muscling his way into my turf. He's always stealing my ideas. He's like the worst comic in the comic room, always taking your bits. But I love Larry. And if those 3 tell you that Andrew Breitbart would have thought X, you can take it to the bank. Now, Minnesota. Everybody knows I love my Minnesotians. You know that. Love me some State Fair. Well, I got a call. I'm a Fox News contributor, and when there's a story that they need someone to bone up on, they usually will give me a call. And so the story is Minnesota fraud. And I said, yeah, I can do that. Give me a couple of hours. And went to work on it. And what I found was pretty amazing. I knew it was big. I knew it was ugly. I didn't know how big and ugly it is. So I went on America Reports with Molly earlier today. Cut number 1 is my conversation with Molly Line from a couple hours ago.
Hugh Hewitt is a Fox News contributor and the host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. And sir, thank you for joining us, giving us your time in this holiday week. We greatly appreciate it. I want to kick off right away with getting into this letter that was sent by these mayors who are very concerned really about their own budgets and helping their own people that live in their communities. Here's just one quote from this letter. Fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities, reducing our capacity to plan responsibly, maintain infrastructure, hire and retain employees, and sustain core services without overburdening local taxpayers. The mayors are saying, look, this is trouble not just for the whole state, but for all of these individual communities, cities across the entirety of Minnesota. Your thoughts?
Well, they are a very active group of mayors. Minnesota is a good government, progressive state. And the out country, away from the Twin Cities, is very deep red, but the Twin Cities are very deep blue. This fraud is coming out of the state government, which has been run by Democratic governors for 15 consecutive years, Tim Walz for the last 7. and they did a reorg of all their social service agencies in May of 2023. They split the Department of Human Services into 3 different agencies, obviously none of them devoted to finding or corruption or ferreting it out. And watching Governor Walz dance since he first started to get questions about this story has been amusing, because it's the old, it's not my dog, it didn't bite you, besides you kicked it first. And every time, it's really a different excuse every time he goes in front of the cameras. It was COVID, we had no guardrails, we lacked a toolkit. President Trump is exaggerating. The acting U.S. attorney, who's, by the way, a career federal prosecutor until October, is making it worse than it really is. We're going to fix it. Just don't believe them. Pay no attention. Right now, Molly, it's a story that is growing faster, and this will be for your older audience. They'll get the reference, than The Blob and Steve McQueen's breakout movie in 1958. It was the amoeba from outer space that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's really remarkable that Tim Walz is even thinking about running for re-election. He ought to really quit.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what this means potentially for Tim Walz and the entire administration. As you noted, there have been some recent election victories in the last 2 election cycles in particular that are notable across the country. But, you know, my husband's family has this quote, "Vote out incumbents, let somebody else steal your money." Are the incumbents that are there in Minnesota, will they face repercussions like this? I know it's a great quote, right? Will they face repercussions?
Yeah,
or is the electorate just, you know, leaning blue, leaning left, and they'll stay put despite what is an unfolding massive fraud scandal?
I have been on the air in the Twin Cities for 25 years. I know it well. I even go to the Minnesota State Fair occasionally. They're wonderful people. They are Minnesota nice. People make fun of them because it's Minnesota cold. The Vikings always manage to lose the big game. But people like it's Minnesota nice. But that doesn't make, that's a very high trust environment. If you bring in a dedicated group of fraudsters, they will just bring in their friends, they'll bring in their cousins, they'll bring in everyone. And I don't want to limit to the Somali community, because I don't think it is just the Somali community. When you get up to 9 billion, that's the high end, not the low end. When you get up to those kinds of numbers, you're calling everybody you know. You're getting the Nigerian prince sending you emails asking for your money, and you're sending the Nigerian prince the money. So Tim Walz, who has been governor for 7 years, we all saw him last year up close and personal. He doesn't seem like he's the world's sharpest tool, and we've got to wonder whether or not Minnesota's going to say, bring back a Tim Pawlenty kind of governor. He was the last Republican governor. He left in the end of 2010, beginning of 2011. And since then, it's been Mark Dayton and Tim Walz. It's been a mess. It's a disaster, and it's not going to get better until they vote out the incumbents. I love your family's quote, though. That's pretty funny.
Well, I love talking to you, Hugh Hewitt. That was great. It was great to get kind of a local insider, really somebody that knows the state and understands what's going on there. We love your insight.
Now I'm going to get a lot of email. Molly Lyon's going to get he doesn't know anything about us. He got lost on Lake Minnetonka in a snowstorm, which is true. And I got 1,000 Minnesota stories, but I know the layout of the Minnesota State Fair, and I know Minnesota. It's a high-trust environment. Those people are so nice. Oh, you need $1 million? Sure, let me give it to you in a hot dish. And there you go. You got it. But when I said about Tim Walz dancing, well, they had told me about this story mid-morning. So I'd started doing my research. Don't go on TV, or unless you're prepared to talk about a story, don't wing it. And I couldn't believe it. And then I asked Dwayne to go line them up. So here we go. Cut number 3, Tim Walz. Who's he blaming here?
Oh, I think there's more. And look, we've got organized crime ring in Minnesota. I think it's been going on for years.
Organized crime. Cut number 4.
Look, right now, it's very clear. The entire federal government is weaponized against Minnesota.
It's the federal government. Cut number 5.
And this is what happens when you have a floundering presidency, and it is about those ballrooms and everything else. Now we're back on transgender folks, and these are healthcare providers providing the best guidance to parents and children to get their care.
So it's actually the floundering president with 4.3% GDP. Cut number 6.
Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals.
Generous state. We're a generous state. Cut number 7.
This president has cut a lot of inspector generals. He's cut programs that could help us tackle this on. So we are.
Inspector generals have nothing to do with it. Zero. Nothing. The inspector general, I've got a whole long list, but we'll just do 2 more. Cut number 8.
That's Donald Trump. Deflect demonize, come up with no solutions. He's not going to help fix anything on fraud. My God, there's a big difference between fraud and corruption is something
keeps going. I cannot tell you how long this goes for. I'll leave cut number 9 because it's one of my favorite. Tim Walz has got more excuses than you have fingers and toes for $9 billion of fraud on his watch. He should not run for re-election. He ought really to resign. But if he runs, you've got to beat him because, really, this is a staggering amount of money that has been stolen from a state that just isn't that big. I mean, California, maybe you can lose $9 billion, but Minnesota? That's a lot of hot dishes. When we went to break, I had only given you 6 of the excuses for the massive fraud in the Gopher State that Tim Walz has been atop the government to see happen. Looking the other way, running for vice president, clearly he supervised a reorganization, as I said on Fox News earlier. I didn't know that until I dove in deep. But let's make sure you hear all of Tim Walz's excuses for up to $9 billion of missing money to crooks. Cut number 9, this is my favorite.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life.
It's the white supremacist excuse. That's a new one. Cut number 10, there's another one.
That's how this works. And so would I have wanted to stop this? Would I have gone out? You know, if you think the governor goes out and checks somebody on Medicaid and that they were there, no, but that's somebody in government needed to do that. And if they didn't do that, or if there were loopholes in this, and what we found is these are poorly written and it left openings, and the goal was to get the money out.
The goal was to get the money out. Cut number 11, another one.
They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
It's sensationalism on the administration's part. Cut number 12.
The lack of leadership out of President Trump and his administration, the lack of any courage amongst members of Congress to deal with the health care situation, continuing to put out misinformation, continuing to dabble in conspiracy theory.
Misinformation and conspiracy theory committed the fraud. Cut number 13.
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed.
A lot of white men have to be held accountable in this massive fraud. Cut number 14.
I think it's asking us then, you know, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general.
Got it? Just doubling down here, different setting. White men are the problem. Cut number 15.
Medicaid fraud will stretch across all racial demographics, all ethnic groups. So I think it's really important for us to note each community's got this in their own midst, but to blame them and say that they should have been responsible for stopping it, I think that's a pretty hard reach. I think
everybody does it. That's basically everybody does it. Every community's got its bad eggs. Cut number 16.
Crimes, you would hope that it's being taught both at home and at schools and in our society. But no, I think this idea that the Somali community's to blame for this because they didn't do more, I think that's how we got into this. And
that's how we got into it. Blaming the Somali community in Minneapolis is how we got into $9 billion of fraud. Cut number 16. No, 17.
All this work that's being done, Donald Trump brought this to the attention like this is something brand new. This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on. But he made it white hot and very dangerous.
It's Donald Trump's fault for making it white hot. We were working on this. We were under the hood. Not. Cut number 18.
I think it's an unfortunate situation, but yeah, I think you need to be more skeptical now in this world. I think the COVID pandemic and the releasing of some of the rules, the relaxing of the rules,
COVID. That's the ticket. COVID. One more. Cut number 19.
And look, I have to assess this too. I understand when I speak up, it brings Donald Trump's petty vindictiveness to Minnesota. And this is all about coming and attacking us. He didn't know anything about this. He doesn't know how a Medicaid program works. The only thing he knows about it is he's going to double the cost over the next week. But he doesn't know how these programs work or anything about it. So he heard and somebody told him the Somalis are
This whole story is just Donald Trump's fault. Just so you understand, I think I know his inspiration, cut number 20 from the Blues Brothers.
Oh, please don't kill us. Please, please don't kill us. You know I love you, baby. I wouldn't leave you. It wasn't my fault.
You miserable slug. You think you can talk your way out of this? You betrayed me.
No, I didn't. Honest. I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. An old friend came in from out of town. Someone stole my car. There was an earthquake. A terrible flood. Locust. It wasn't my fault, I swear to God!
All right, now I may have to cut that out in order to post that on YouTube. So if you want, you just look up John Belushi, the Blues Brother, the Excuse-a-thon. But I have a couple of Minnesotans calling in, and they're both named Sven. Really. I'm not making this up. Line number 1, Sven. Where are you, Sven?
I'm in Glencoe, Minnesota.
Oh, good to see you. Good, good. And have you defrauded your government today?
No, I'm one of those honest ex-Lutherans. If I were still a Lutheran, I probably would.
But
no more.
What are you making your governor? He's got a lot of reasons to blame other people here, right?
Yeah, we need to feed him a daily dose of stale lutefisk.
You got to get him a hot dish, but I'm telling you, this is not a good look for Minnesota. Are you embarrassed?
Thoroughly embarrassed. We have a guy named Elliot Engen, another Norwegian, who said on radio that the fraud, according to him, he's vying for the job of state auditor. Elliot Engen, he says it's $14.9 billion.
First of all, don't you question the sanity of anyone who wants to be the state auditor in Minnesota, knowing what you're walking into, and the fact that
he's a Norwegian. He's Norwegian, so I can
maybe
trust
he's
him.
stoic. But I looked up the Department of Human Services before they reorganized it, when it was just one department instead of 3. 7,000 employees, $45 billion budget. I have no idea how they stole $9 billion out of 45. Now 45 over 4, so it's probably closer to $200 billion. So maybe it's only 10% has gone. But if he thinks it's up to $20 billion or $18 billion, I wouldn't want
14.9.
14.9. I would not want that job. What's his name? Elliot Enger? Elliot
Engen. And Alpha News, Liz Collin would be great to have in your show, or Brad Carlson. You probably know Brad.
I know Brad. Brad's he's not one of the original Northern Alliance, but he's been adopted into the Northern Alliance.
Mitch Berg,
No,
yeah.
We can't have Mitch anywhere near us because he always carries.
Can I say one other thing?
If it's not good about Powerline, for example.
It's not good. It gets worse. I just got a letter. I'm a one-person corporation, and I have to pay into the state now premiums next year for family leave up to 20 weeks. Now, I'm never going to take family leave. What a one-man corporation. I'm a contractor.
They don't understand.
The state of Minnesota.
People can leave. North Dakota is to your west. All you have to do is go west, young man. All right? Just go west. Let me talk to the second Sven. 1-800-520-1234. Sven, where are you?
I am calling from the Phillips neighborhood of South Minneapolis, one of the.
And are you really named Sven?
Excuse me? No,
are you really named?
My name is changed, so I don't get reparations or have anybody come after me for saying something negative.
I wouldn't. We wouldn't. No one would ever. No one who stay on the line. Not Sven. Everybody always plays this trick on me. They're very mean, actually, in Minnesota. I've been there so often. Jay Larson, get to work. If I had a board, I would play that, but I don't have a board. Even though the guys at the Ruthless Podcast, by the way, funniest edition ever, though it's NC-17 of the Ruthless Podcast today. More on that coming up. More Sven. My number is 1-800-520-1234. Call. Talking with Sven in South Minneapolis. Sven, are you a Lutheran?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Just checking because it's normally 9 out of 10. I'm a pretty expert on Lutheran because Ricardo, who has the hot dog stand and driving range in Miami, was once a Lutheran. So I'm able to keep up on that stuff.
So as you hear, Walt, you will never hear him be apologetic or show concern about the amount of money lost or just accept any responsibility or concern at all for the American taxpayer. He's only wants to holler at Trump and other people, as you've been pointing out.
As far as I can tell, it's got nothing to do with Minnesota. As far I listened, I got 16 cuts of this guy, 17 cuts, and it's got nothing to do with him. And I think we just have to accept that and move on, Sven. Thank you. Let's talk to Ollie in Minneapolis. Line 1. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. Good. Longtime fan. Listen to you in the mornings. Catching you when I can in the afternoon.
Thank
I've been
you.
in Minnesota for 20-plus years. Fully and completely embarrassed for the state. Understand that everybody has a different opinion, but this is absolutely unacceptable, and Walz needs to be held accountable. And there's many people in this state who are really beginning to understand the depth of this fraud. I hope you will continue to keep a spotlight on it. We are working with a circle of friends to start to explore the Freedom of Information Act, to look into some of these NGOs per county, the amount of money being funneled into these NGOs with no auditing, no metrics, and no...
Well, let me just comment on that. We're talking about billions of dollars in Minnesota, and $10 million is a lot of money. $1 million is a lot of money. So if you talk about between 9 and 14.5 billion, what were they doing? Shoveling money into the trunks of cars?
No, it takes no responsibility. If you were a family at home and you didn't meet your budget, you would be held accountable for it.
Don't you feel like a dope? You're the only person in the Gopher State that got no money?
Yes. And I think they should be forced to return this money back. There should be an audit done immediately. He shouldn't be able to spend one more penny.
I want everyone to hear me clearly. This is John Hinderacker's fault. All right? Everybody needs to know it's Dwight Rabus's fault. These are it's Scott Johnson's fault. 3 lawyers who could run for governor right there. Dwight Rabus, Scott Johnson, John Hinderacker, they could all run. They actually are all smart lawyers, and they haven't gotten any money either, so how smart can they be? I should have gotten money. I went to the state fair often enough. Let me talk with line number 3, Sven. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. You're on.
Yes. So according to my children, I'm also Santa. And so you're on the naughty list because you have to tweet Dwayne better.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
What, that would break? Yes. Did you see him play hockey in Minnesota when he came to Minnesota and we played Hugh Hewitt on ice thrice?
We stand by him.
No, well, you're the only ones. Don't lean on him. There's less of him since he went on My PhD weight loss. He can't hold you up anymore. You remember him from his jolly old Santa days. That's not him anymore. Harley, can we have another shot?
Any question you want about Minnesota?
Well, I've got no question about Minnesota. I just want to, did you get any money?
No, I didn't get any.
Well, don't you feel like a dope?
That's kind of part of our repertoire up here.
I just got to say, people who didn't get any money in Minnesota have been sleeping on this. Thank you, Sven. Let me do one more. Line number 4. You're on the air with Hugh Hewitt. Hello, Sven.
Good afternoon, Hugh. How are you doing?
Did you get any money?
I did not, and yes, I feel completely foolish. But the sad part
at least they ought to open the state fair for no admission this year, don't you think? Don't you think that in light of this, they ought to say everybody in Ollie in free? I mean, they ought to say Ollie, Sven and in free. But no one should have to pay to go to the fair if they're going to weigh billions of dollars to crooks.
It should be free for the next 10 years at the billions of dollars that have been squandered.
If you knew,
and then
it's Dwight's fault.
The clawback is going to kill the rest of it.
No, the clawback is you're going to pay and pay and pay some more. But remember,
that's what I mean.
It's not Tim Walz's fault. It's John Hinderacker and Scott Johnson and Dwight Rabus's fault. I might even blame former justices of the Supreme Court, but I can't get in trouble with the law. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back with David Drucker. I want to find out if he got paid. I think he flew over Minnesota. They must have given money away the way that they do T-shirts at baseball games. You're all going to be mad at David Drucker if you're watching on the Salem News Channel because David is looking like $1 million and he's outside in Southern California. How long are you out there for, David?
Well, no, I'm on the East Coast. I've got a heater on me. I'm in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Oh, I thought you meant Rehoboth Beach, California, next to Manhattan Beach. So you're here. Oh, well, good for you. David is, of course, senior political writer for The Dispatch. And I was asking him during the break who came over from The Standard. And, of course, Stephen Hayes and Jonah Goldberg are there. They're the bosses. But John McCormick and Mike Warren did a great job this week. And, David, I'm saying this because it's a pitch for you ought to subscribe to The Dispatch or give it away as a Christmas present because it's a fine, fine, fine group of people, even though some of them don't like me. And David, I think I can say it's probably the fairest national circulation magazine out there. Am I right?
We try, as we like to say, we're center right, but not partisan. And we try and base all of our opinion and reporting in things that we really think are true. And then you can disagree with the context that we present. You can disagree with the opinions. You can think the reporting is missing something, but we hope you don't think the underlying facts are incorrect.
Okay, so I want your take on the TPUSA Lollapalooza. I love Erica Kirk, the way that she presents her case. I think she's a woman of great courage. I don't know her. I knew Charlie, but I didn't know her. And it just seemed like a bunch of people turned her show and TPUSA show into a tug of war over who knew Andrew Breitbart better. And the guys, I didn't hear Larry O'Connor, Dana Lash, or Kurt Schlichter up there, and they're the three that I know knew Andrew the best, and I knew Andrew pretty well, but what'd you make of that whole thing?
I don't know, Hugh. I'm not really sure what to make of it. I mean, on the one hand, Turning Point USA with these events features, really sort of, and I mean this in a, I don't mean this in a negative way, right? But they feature normal, sort of grounded, center-right thinkers and advocates and activists, and then they feature some people that are just bonkers, right? I mean, if you want to argue, that Israeli policy or things the Israeli government is doing is wrong, then you should argue that. If you want to argue against the Israeli-U.S. alliance, it's not that it's bonkers, but it's an interesting position to take.
And, you know what's bonkers, David? And I can prove it. We've been doing this show for 25 years, and the moment anyone brings up the USS Liberty, we hang up on them because that's nuttery. Right. That's just absolute nuttery. I mean, they did. Right. Yes, the Israelis hit an American ship by mistake, and many Americans died, and it was an unfortunate ally on ally act that happened, like when we killed people by mistake 25 different times during the Long War. When someone brings up the Liberty, it's, they're just bringing up the Jews. They want to blame the Jews.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right. And I think an organization and an organization like TPUSA and the events that they hold should just disinvite people who traffic in anti-Semitism or put a spotlight on anti-Semites. And I don't see why that's so hard. And it wouldn't hurt the organization.
You don't even have to say that you're doing that. You can just not invite them.
Right. But they won't do that. And it's just the way it is. And so it doesn't mean that I won't be covering it. It's a very important organization. And I will be covering all of the things they do, and not everything they do is about that. But in terms of its place in the conservative movement, it's a very interesting place because of the diverse array of voices that they invite. It's just that diverse array is a sort of whitewashing term, because it's not that they're, featuring big government populist conservatives and small government Reagan era conservatives. They have all of that, but they also have people who, as you said, go after the Jews, and they do it pretty unapologetically, and they should be disinvited and not included.
Now, I also have a very good friend, who I'm sure you know as well, just a very politically savvy person inside the Beltway, who asked me with a question in his voice, do you think TPUSA lasts? And I said, absolutely. I think it's a get out the vote machine, and that it has replaced college Republicans, which fell into sort of disrepair over the last 10 to 15 years, though there are some good chapters here and there. So I think TPUSA survives and thrives if it doesn't drive Thelma and Louise style over the cliff. You agree with me on that?
Well, yes, and I would say, I mean, I think it's very well funded, it's very organized. There are a lot of skilled people there, and so I think for the foreseeable future, they're going to be a major force in Republican politics. I think the question is, do they remain as broadly respected and influential as they were with Charlie Kirk at the helm? He was a unique individual, uniquely admired by both conservative populists and Reagan era conservatives. And it's hard to replace that. And so it's going to be up to the new leadership to try and do things that they might not have had to do with Kirk at the helm. Kirk at the helm was the seal of approval that even if you didn't agree with everything they were doing or all of the people that they associated with, that ultimately they were going to be on the right side of every moral question and they were going to do the right thing. I think the new leadership is just going to have to work harder to make people feel at ease and as comfortable as Charlie Kirk was able to do.
You see, it was the third iteration from what Jerry Falwell called the moral majority in the 80s, and then Ralph Reed, the Christian Alliance, and Charlie Kirk was building TPUSA across Judeo-Christian lines and sort of mainstream, solid conservatism of the sort that Mike Pence would be comfortable with, but they got to be careful of their brand. Now, here's a very practical question. I would bet Ted Cruz is going to run for president. Does he feel as welcome at TPUSA this week as he would have 2 weeks ago?
I don't think so. No, I mean, it doesn't mean he won't go. I think, look, Ben Shapiro is a good stand-in for that question. On the one hand, he was invited and given a prominent spot on the stage and prominent speaking time. And so it's a credit to Turning Point USA that they did all of that, right? But in the same way, a lot of what he said was applauded. A lot of the speakers before and after him that were saying the opposite of what he was saying were also applauded and were also comfortable there. And I think in particular, because Turning Point USA is very favorable to the vice president, J.D. Vance, I think Turning Point USA might be a little bit more hostile to Cruz, but that is more normal politics, and that has nothing to do with this other part of the discussion.
But if you want to build out the replacement for the college Republicans, but it's actually this millennium branded and operative, you don't close the doors to anyone who's a mainstream or even a more liberal Republican or a more arch-conservative Republican like Dr. Tom from the old days in Oklahoma. David M. Drucker, thank you, my friend. Have a great start to the new year. Follow him on X at David M. Drucker. And again, The Dispatch, great Christmas gift. One of my favorite Christmas movies, The Muppets. Family Christmas. We need a little Christmas right this very minute. I learned yesterday there's a Christmas movie I have not seen. Christmas in Connecticut. Never seen it. And so Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I, when we have a day apart after the mad rush of family, that's on our to-do list. Here's something on your to-do list. I used to do all my Christmas shopping today on the 23rd. And I'd roll into Nordstrom and I'd be out of there an hour and a half because Nordstrom, you can return everything. But we're not doing that anymore. We have a different plan. I don't buy anything. I've been put on the bench. I'm in the penalty box. I can't buy anything. The Fetching Miss Hewitt has to buy anything. But I can save everyone some money. So I recommend like news items and the Dispatch, but I can save you money if you will simply investigate Consumer Cellular by going to consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or call 1-800-411-4454. Remember, my code is Hugh. When you call 1-800-411-4454, that code, Hugh, will get you your second month of service for free if you make the switch. But you got to use my promo code Hugh. The switch. Why switch? Takes 20 minutes to do this process if you decide to make the switch. You make the switch from Big Cellular to Consumer Cellular to save money. All right, so get out your phone bill, find out what you're paying, how much data are you using, and then call 1-800-411-4454 and say, I want to investigate switching. And by the way, there's one button you have to press. I think press 1 for A to C or whatever. And You press one button, then you're talking to a real live human being in the United States of America. And they will talk you through whether or not it makes sense to switch. No gimmicks. They're just trying to get you on price and service. You can have savings and service. You can have them both. But you got to call 1-800-411-4454 or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. And remember as well that if you're over 50, they have a special deal for you, you and your partner, you and your spouse, two people, two lines, $60 a month for unlimited data. $60 a month for unlimited data. So that's, if you're over 50, that's a win. Get out your phone bill, check, just ask yourself, $60 or whatever you're paying for unlimited data. Just apples to apples. Do it, and then you can figure out whether or not you want to switch to Consumer Cellular. 1-800-411-4454. My code is Hugh, or consumercellular.com/Hugh. When I come back, David Bahnsen, founder of the Bahnsen Group, I asked him to join me weeks ago to talk about investing in the new year at the end of the year, and it just happened that he's showing up on the day that the GDP goes up by 4.3% in the third quarter. That's a good question to begin with, but he runs the Dividend Cafe, and we'll be talking about that. I'm joined by David Bahnsen this hour. David is the founder and CEO of the Bahnsen Group, an investment advisory firm. He is also the host of the Dividend Cafe. He is a great writer. He's written a lot of books on working, and I asked him weeks ago to do this segment on sort of financial planning for smart people before the GDP number came in at 4.3% for the third quarter day. But I'll sneak in one quick question on that, David. Are you surprised by that number?
Not really surprised, too, because I think that there has been a quarter-by-quarter volatility, a lumpiness on those import-export numbers all year. The consumer side, for me, I'm never surprised by. That's where the strength of this report was. And I've been aware for my whole adult life that Americans love to spend money. The issue for me will be whether or not the business investment side hangs in there next year, because that was where the weakness in this report was. And that, as a supply sider, that's where I believe future economic growth comes from. And so that's what we have to be watching in 2026. It's what they call non-residential fixed investment.
Non-residential fixed investment. All right. I want to tell people that they need to listen to the Dividend Cafe this week when you went through 25 years of volatility. Bottom line, if you put $1 million in the market in 2000, it would be worth $7 million today. And that is such a slap in the face. I just wanted people to understand that good investing throughout a lot of volatility, if you do it smart, the way David's group has you do it, and I'm not a client of David's, and David is not a client of mine. I just think he's remarkably responsible and level-headed, to which I will add. So I'm going to ask you for the essentials of sound investing. I want to add as well the very sad news today. Senator Ben Sasse, former Senator Sasse, posted the unfortunate news that he has been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and that it's very unlikely he's around for much longer, though he will fight the good fight, and he's got great faith in the Lord, and his family is doing okay. But it puts the line underneath the need to be prudent and fiscally responsible for your family. Having said that, David, what goes into good financial planning as people come to year end and think about their New Year's commitments to the market and their money?
Yeah, I'll echo your comments on Ben. He's a dear friend. I've never had an elected official I had a closer relationship with, or one I've thought higher of. Ben is as good as they come, and it's absolutely devastating news, and our thoughts and prayers for his family. And I'll leave it there because I won't be able to keep going. The question you ask is a very important one, and it starts before people go into what should I do in the final week or two of a year, is the bigger question to take a step back from a high level and say, what are the key ingredients for financial planning and financial organization to begin with? And I always say that you have to first define the goals, and then planning is finding the solutions that match those goals. And I don't think enough people do that. You know, start with just what are we trying to solve for. You can have somebody with $20 million who has a real problem in their financial planning, and you can have someone with $300,000 that has all their stuff buttoned up. because different resources lead to different needs and things to be solved for. The portfolio allocation is a big part of it, but it's not the only one. The tax efficiency, the estate planning, how do people want to transfer assets? Sometimes there's mixed marriages and stepkids and other things in life that complicate things. And so there's a lot of dimensions to this, Hugh. But it starts with just solving for what your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals are. And most financial planning in America revolves around the long-term goal of future income streams that can outlive somebody. And we want people living good, long, healthy lives. And therefore, if they're going to have a period of time without incoming income, they need that future income. And look, I make the comment in Dividend Cafe because it's mathematically accurate that for this crazy 25 years to start off this century we've had, that people have made 7.5 times their money if they just started in the S&P and woke up today. And my goal in pointing that out is not to tell people go put 100% of your money in the S&P. I don't recommend that, and people could have done a lot better than that doing other things. But the point being, you at your age, me at my age, other people with different resources, their portfolio should look different because everybody has a different risk appetite, different goals. I think that. Go ahead, Hugh. I'm sorry. I've been going on a long time.
Well, no, I want to make sure you get a lot of runway here. I want you to answer the question: who needs a financial planner? Now, and I have no dog in this fight. I'm all set. My kids are all set. As I said, I'm not David's client, but I trust David. I've known him for, 25, 30 years. And he does very well by his clients, but I'm not one of them. But I thought he'd be really good, because he's good on air, at answering who needs a financial planner and how do you find one?
Well, and that's the thing, is that there's different financial planners that accommodate different needs of the market. My firm tends to deal with wealthier people, and I think sometimes that there's a financial planner needed for a college graduate who doesn't even have assets to manage yet, but they're trying to figure out how to reduce credit card debt or how to reduce student loan debt or how, with this new job they have, to accumulate their 401k assets. So I don't know anyone who doesn't need some financial planning or guidance, but the needs are going to be different, and different types of firms exist to meet different types of the market. But once someone does have assets, the answer is pretty much 100% of people who are going to need some guidance or some organization around the accumulation, preservation, and transfer of those assets, those resources. You start adding in things like marriages, estate planning, children, stepchildren, caring for aging parents. A lot of complexity can enter the picture. And much like the legal profession, where you've spent so much of your career, there's different elements of advice that are going to be tailored to different people depending on their need. And I think finance is very similar.
Now, it is my experience that the biggest impediment to people is they don't want to, what we call the open kimono, a lawyer. I always tell my clients when I used to practice, I got to know everything or I can't help you. You can't hide the ball on this and expect me to give you the right advice on a land use issue. Do you get people who come into the Bahnsen Group and don't tell you the full story so that you don't know actually what you're advising them on?
It happened much more earlier in my career. I've gotten better over the years at not allowing it to happen. And, we now have a larger, more sophisticated firm. I have 91 people that work for me, and we're managing $8.5 billion. And so we have the ability to kind of know the whole picture. But to the extent that somebody always can hide some part of the ball or just not tell you certain elements, it can definitely happen, but it is only hurting them. And what we always say is we're not here to get all this information for any other reason than to give you the best possible advice. And I have no doubt it's true in any other element of the legal advisory or business consulting, what have you. That information becomes very necessary to have context, to have the right nuances, etc. So yeah, it can happen, but I think that a lot of times people believe that if they disclose everything, then someone's going to try to sell them more things. And that's why I recommend that no matter what financial planner or wealth advisory relationship you're working with, You're not working with someone who has products to sell you, that they're working on a fee for advice, because you need them to be aligned with you, eliminating that conflict of interest. So it's what we refer to as a legal fiduciary. Not everyone giving financial advice is operating as a fiduciary. My firm does, and plenty of other good firms out there do, but people are right to be skeptical if they're worried they're going to get sold something.
So what questions, we got about 2 minutes, David, and we'll probably do this in the new year as well. What questions should people ask in their first sit down with a financial advisor about whether or not they're going to hire them? What should they ask them?
You know, I think that some of the early questions have to be very probing, relational type questions. You can ask someone, what were you up this year? Or how did your portfolio do last year? Those things. But ultimately getting the real short-term performance side, first of all, if they answer, that might be a good trick question, because I wouldn't work with anyone who even answered it. How can they tell you how they would have done for you before they know you? So telling Mr. Jones how they did for Mrs. Smith is an irrelevant question. But I think you want to ask questions that help get to know them as a person, because so much of this is trust, and you want to know what their values are you aligned, how do you see the world, their work ethic. You know, when a financial advisor starts off telling you their handicap or what golf clubs they're members of or whatnot, that's all fine. A lot of advisors want to be able to brag about their own financial position. You know, I will say this, Hugh, one of the reasons I think a lot of people have liked working with us, I think people are well aware that I'm financially comfortable, but they also know that I'm constantly working. And I think advisors that brag about how little they work, I would knock them off the list. Let's start there.
Let us start there, and I will also start by sending people to the Dividend Cafe. It's at every podcast. Listen to the most recent one on the last 25 years in volatility, and then get smart. David will be back in 2026, and we'll continue this conversation to make everybody financially literate. On Christmas Eve, I don't want a lot for Christmas either. I want you to hear what Tim Walz has been up to. Minnesota. I'm on AM 1280 The Patriot, and I've been on AM 1280 The Patriot since the first day of this show, which happened to be July 10, 2000. I know that because it was also my wedding anniversary. And Generalissimo has been here from day one, and Adam joined a weekend. And Harley's been here for years and years. And so we know when a story is unusual. This story in Minnesota is very unusual because, as I said on Fox News earlier today, it's like the 1958 movie The Blob. The Blob starred Steve McQueen. And, I don't think I've seen it in years, but it was just an amoeba from space, landed, and began to grow. And it got bigger and bigger, and it absorbed everything. It went through, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, it went through crack. It just grew and grew and grew, and Steve McQueen was up against The Blob. It was one of the early sci-fi masterpieces, is The Blob grew and grew. This story in Minnesota is growing and growing and growing because the scale up against little Minnesota. Now, Minnesota is a very red state and a very blue couple of cities. So you take the Twin Cities, and they're deep blue, very Democratic farm labor, and the rest of the state, which used to be blue because of the Democratic farm labor and the Iron Range and the farmer, the Grange and all that different stuff. Progressive, very high trust environment, very Lutheran, hardworking, good folks, hot dishes all around, ice skates. We love it up there. Chad the Elder is mean, but not most people are. And, nihilist in golf pants. I've known so many people in Minnesota for the last 25 years. Lilacs is on once a week. I got to tell you, Tim Walz is a real embarrassment. Now, whether it's hundreds of millions of dollars, or in fact, $14.5 billion. That's the range. I thought the range was up to $9 billion, but I heard a bigger number today that's being used now, $14.5 billion. Who's to blame? Tim Walz has an answer. In fact, he has a lot of answers. Cut number 3.
Oh, I think there's more. And look, we've got organized crime ring in Minnesota. I think it's been going on for years.
Okay, organized crime. Cut number 4.
Look, right now, it's very clear. The entire federal government is weaponized against Minnesota.
It's the federal government's problem. Cut number 5.
And this is what happens when you have a floundering presidency, and it is about those ballrooms and everything else. Now we're back on transgender folks, and these are healthcare providers providing the best guidance to parents and children to get their care.
So it's ballrooms and transgender programs. Cut number 6.
Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals.
How can you be a well-run state when your Department of Human Services is reorganized into 3 different agencies and proceeds to enable fraud at this scale? So it's a generous state. That's the problem. Cut number 7.
This president has cut a lot of inspector generals. He's cut programs that could help us tackle this on. So we are.
Do you realize that's the dumbest thing he says? The inspector generals have nothing to do with this. There's one nothing to do with this. That's a lie. That's just a make-up. How do I get out of this? Cut number 8.
That's Donald Trump. Deflect, demonize, come up with no solutions. He's not going to help fix anything on fraud. My God, there's a big difference between fraud and corruption is something he knows about.
You know, it's Donald Trump's fault on corruption, but let's not talk about the fraud, which is the corruption. They're actually the same thing in this case. Cut number 9.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life. And I think everybody in this room knows.
It's the white supremacist problem. It's the blame problem. Cut number 10.
That's how this works. And so would I have wanted to stop this? Would I have gone out? You know, if you think the governor goes out and checks somebody on Medicaid and that they were there, no, but that's somebody in government needed to do that. And if they didn't do that, or if there were loopholes in this, and what we found is these are poorly written and it left openings, and the goal was to get the money out. We'll fix.
Something's poorly written that left loopholes, but it's not his fault. He's been governor for 7 years. Before him, Mark Dayton, Democrat, was governor for 8 years. And by the way, I'm blaming John Hinderaker, Scott Johnson, and Dwight Rabus, because all 3 of them are superb lawyers, and none of them have run for governor against this knucklehead. Cut number 11.
They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
It's just sensationalism. There's no problem here. Cut number 12.
The lack of leadership out of President Trump and his administration, the lack of any courage amongst members of Congress to deal with the health care situation, continuing to put out misinformation, continuing to dabble.
We had a bunch there. Lack of courage in Congress and misinformation. Cut number 13.
Look, it's not law-abiding citizens. If that were the case, there's a lot of white men should be holding a lot of white men accountable for the crimes that they have committed.
A lot of white men are somehow, I don't know what he's trying to say there. Cut number 14.
I think it's asking us then, you know, for every crime, which of course the majority being committed by white men, asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general. And it's crime in general, but particularly crime in general by white men. Cut number 15. Medicaid fraud will stretch across all racial demographics, all ethnic groups. So I think it's really important for us to note each community's got this in their own midst, but to blame them and say that they should have been responsible for stopping it, I think that's a pretty hard reach. I think each community is responsible for the fraud within the community, or maybe nobody's responsible. Cut number 16. Crimes, you would hope that it's being taught both at home and at schools and in our society. But no, I think this idea that the Somali community's to blame for this because they didn't do more, I think that's how we got into this. And okay, it's not the Somalis. That's how we got into this, blaming the Somalis. But it's the schools, and we're not teaching in the schools something or other, blah, blah, blah. Cut number 17. All this work that's being done, Donald Trump brought this to the attention like this is something brand new. This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on. But he made it white hot and very dangerous. So there's nothing new here. There's nothing to see. Move along. It's just Donald Trump made it white hot. We've been working on it. Really? Okay, cut number 18,
It's an unfortunate situation, but yeah, I think you need to be more skeptical now in this world. I think the COVID pandemic and the releasing of some of the rules, the relaxing of the rules, foster.
COVID's fault. It's COVID's fault. One more, cut number 19.
And look, I have to assess this too. I understand when I speak up it brings Donald Trump's petty vindictiveness to Minnesota. And this is all about coming and attacking us. He didn't know anything about this. He doesn't know how a Medicaid program works. The only thing he knows about it is he's going to double the cost over the next week. But he doesn't know how these programs work or anything about it. So he heard, and somebody told him, the Somalis are stealing money and they're not doing anything about it.
Okay, so I want to ask you, 1-800-520-1234. You can be in Minnesota cold. You can be up there in the far north where I'm heard. You can even be in North Dakota. We'll count you as eligible to call. Are you satisfied with your governor's explanations? Because, by the way, all of you other people who are laughing in Minnesota, wait until they look under your hood. Because the amount of fraud in Minnesota is not going to be the exception. It's going to be the rule of the Biden year. Christmas Eve, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in there making sure you know everything. I was on Fox News earlier today, and that's what brought this up. They asked me to talk about the Minnesota story. So I dug in, and I could not believe the number of different answers Tim Walz has given. I also can't believe that Eric Holder actually vetted that guy and put him on a national ticket. Might have been a pretty good assistant football coach. And maybe it was okay in Congress. You don't have to be the sharpest guy in the room to be in Congress. Goodness knows that's true, and that's bipartisan. But if you're going to run a state for 7 years, and all of a sudden you've got the biggest fraud on a per capita basis that I've ever seen. I mean, we got a $20 billion fraud in California in the unemployment claims during COVID, but they got 45 million people. I'm guessing, I don't even want to guess how many. Generalissimo, how many people does Minnesota have? You know everything Minnesota.
There's probably what? There's probably 2 million in the Twin Cities, and there's maybe 1 million the rest of the state combined.
I think you're low. I think you're low. How many people in Minnesota? You know, there's this thing called ChatGPT, and there are 5.8 million.
Okay.
6 million people.
Okay.
So 6 million people, $18 billion. $14.5 billion in fraud is the high end, and the low end is $1 billion. So let's take a middle number. Let's say $8 billion.
I'm going with 9. 18 billion was given out in programs. About half of it was fraudulent.
That's what the former acting United States attorney said. Right. It's about half. So, okay, 9.
9.
So what's that on a per capita basis? 5.8 million people and $9 billion of stealing. What's that come down to?
6 million out of 9 billion. That's what, 1.5.
You didn't pass math, did you? You were the projector guy. You were the overhead projector guy. Did you take?
I was told there would be no math.
I know, but did you take algebra?
Yes.
This is just division. Do you have a calculator? I don't have a calculator that works on this. Yeah. So, would someone figure that out? $9 billion.
How much fraud per person?
Yeah. How much each person should have got? I mean, if we were doing this fairly, it's Minnesota. How much did Chad the Elder make off with? Do we think? You know, I'm not sure. Neil-listed golf pants, lilacs. Lilacs probably papering his house with greenbacks. Kevin in somewhere in Minnesota. Kevin, did you get any money?
It's $1,000. It's $6 billion, $1,000 $1,000 for you.
It can't be $1,000.
Yeah, well, $1 billion's 1,000 million, right?
Yeah, you're doing math on me on the air. That's not good radio. I want to know if you got any money.
I did not. I'm on the losing end of this. This is the thing. I've got cousins, siblings, co-workers, friends who are going to buy everything that Walz said. They hate Trump. They don't care. And he's going to get reelected in November.
You know, how could you cut to the chase. You cut to the chase. I appreciate it, Kevin.
By the way, it's $1,500 a person. It's $1,500 a person.
How in the world can anyone vote for Tim Walz after the state government that he has run for 7 years loses $9 billion? I mean, how?
They do not see the connection between voting for him and the fraud. They don't. I'm telling you, I've had this conversation. They get mad at me for blaming them for it. They don't see the connection.
What do they think the governor does? He runs the executive branch.
Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
See, this is going to be the most interesting race in 2026 if he doesn't drop out, which he should do.
He's running against Trump.
I know, but I think Minnesota, I generally think Minnesota is a smart place with smart people. Because I told you why. John Hinderaker, Scott Johnson, Dwight Rabus, Neil Liston, Golf Pants, Chad the Elder. These are lilacs. There are all these smart people up there. Why they choose to live there, I don't know. It's cold. But they do. How in the world can he win when you've lost $9 billion?
Well, the DFL is a vote-gathering machine. It's well-oiled. They get their laborers out. They get the teachers out. They do the thing.
But I would think the teachers would be mad. I would think everyone would be furious.
The teachers are
furious.
The teachers are on the winning end of state budgets. Over 40% of the general fund goes to teachers.
All right, Minnesotans, I'm asking you, 1-800-520-1234. If you're going to vote for Walz, I would really love for you to call me if you're going to vote for him again after this nightmare. The blob takes over Minnesota. 1-800-520-1234. Don't be ashamed. We won't shame you. We won't blame you. Maybe a little bit. We're making fun of Minnesotans here. And not really. I feel bad for him. You got Tim Walz for governor, but I cannot believe you'll reelect him. Let's go to John on line 3. Where are you, John?
Hey, Hugh. Actually, I'm living in Colorado, but I grew up in Minnesota, and we got a governor just as bad as Walz.
Well, no, but you didn't. You're not going to have any money. They're not sending it to Colorado. They're the fraudsters are in Minnesota. They're not going to send you. You know, you might if you get money. Let me know. I actually think your governor is pretty smart. He's liberal, but he's pretty smart. Yeah, he's very liberal.
Dude, this is a lot of fun. I'm the same age as you, and I enjoy listening to you talk about your grandkids. I've got 9 grandkids with 1 more on the way. So
best thing in the world. I get to spend Christmas with Genghis Kate and T-Rex Teddy. It's going to be fabulous, and so it's going to be a wreck. And by the end of the day, they start out at a 10. They're that happy, and by the end of the day, they're down at -5, and war is broken out. Thank you, my friend. Let me go to Tim in Minnesota. Where are you, Tim?
Awesome. See, I'm from Tom Emmer's district, so we do have some good people in Minnesota.
Did you get any money?
I believe there's hope. No. He lied to us in the last election. He promised all the citizens, was it 2,000? I think we got $500, I think, or something like that.
But the do you think that?
Go ahead.
Do you know anyone who got any money out of this gig?
No. But the issue going to next year's election, in my opinion, is we have to really educate the people, even the progressives. The problem is not affordability with the private sector, it's the government sector, and we see it in Minnesota with the taxation. Today, some articles came out about property taxes. They're going up 10% in a lot of the cities.
How, boy, oh boy, if I had $9 billion or $5 billion stolen out of my general fund, and then they raised my property taxes, I would be extraordinarily active in the election, registering people to throw the bums out. That's what I would think.
Yep.
Hey, thank you, my friend. Then go to Matt. Matt, you're in the Twin Cities?
Hey, Hugh. Thanks for having me on.
Did you get any money?
No. In fact, I just keep paying in. And I made a joke the other day that we should all strike paying our taxes to the state because we're paying into a fraudulent organization.
Well, do you listen to NPR? Everybody listens to NPR, right?
I try not to.
But are they covering it? I mean, it must be very embarrassing to them.
I doubt it. We're a soft target, and people don't talk about this, but our Minnesotans, and most of us here are Scandinavian. We have that oh shucks, Minnesota nice. So we're a super soft target to sneak things by us because we think everybody's inherently good, and we don't question things. And I think that's why a lot of this happens.
Well, I actually have to agree with you. We have put stuff over on Minnesota for years, and we had Jay Larson running promotions for you, and I'd say that would never work. Hugh Hewitt on ice twice, Hugh Hewitt on ice thrice, Hugh Hewitt on ice, Roman numeral 4. And Jay said, they'll come. And you would come. No matter what the ridiculous idea he would come up with. Snowmobiling when the wind chill factor had it 60 degrees below zero on Lake Minnetonka. People showed up. You folks are just way too trusting.
Well, and we're also one of the highest propensity state voting, I believe, too, as a percentage of our people. But not enough people are digging deep enough, in my opinion, and I think the wool is maybe coming off our eyes finally. The
wool? It's like steel reinforced girders on your eyes if you miss $8 billion. All right, I got to go talk to Maria. Thank you, my friend. Maria in St. Paul, did you at least get an ice castle this year?
No.
Well, what about opening the state fair for free? You think that's at least...
No.
Nothing?
No.
Ice skates for everyone?
No.
Free blade sharpening?
No.
How about a hockey puck with Tim Walsh's face on it so you can at least push it around the ice?
That would be nice.
Okay.
Okay, so I was working at a hospital today, so I came out and started listening a little bit later, and you are talking about, did we get money back? And
no, did you get any money
at
all?
What money
I think they were giving away money the way that the California Angels give away T-shirts in Anaheim. Is they get these big guns and they put the T-shirts in it and they send it up into they think they were doing that with money in Minnesota.
Nope. They gave it to us, some people, but not the people who work hard.
You didn't get any?
No.
Okay. You slow people. You people are nice and slow. I mean, if they're giving away money. Mark, and thank you very much, Maria. Mark where are you, Mark? I can't read the small print.
Okay, I'm from Monroe, Wisconsin.
Oh, did they give you money in Wisconsin?
I wish.
You just got to drive across that bridge. I did that to go to Wisconsin. You just go across the bridge and they'll give you $1,000, I think. No, yeah. By the way, that's not true. I don't want people driving across the bridge and looking for $1,000. Wisconsin people are a little slow on the uptick. You know, that could be a problem.
Well, with the governor we have, it's no stretch of the imagination.
I'm telling you, this is every state. Minnesota is just a leading indicator of fraud. You agree with me?
Absolutely. I want to put a blurb in here. John Cougar Mellencamp had a top hit that said when the walls comes tumbling down. And my point is anybody that supports Tim Walz substantiates that they definitely have the Trump derangement syndrome. I mean,
it really is getting that level. You can't vote for this guy. Thank you, my friend. I want to remind everyone, I'm not being generous right now, but I want you to be generous to Angel Tree. It's the penultimate day that I'm asking you to try and get some money into the Angel Tree Fund so we can serve some more kids. It'll make one more kid, two more kids, three more kids. Every $30 takes care of a kid whose mom and or dad is in jail. And that child will get a present that they want, a note from mom or dad. They will get a Bible and a connection to an Angel Tree volunteer. All you have to do is go to HughHewitt.com and go to the top, and there you will find the banner for Angel Tree. I want to remind you, did you forget Dad? Did you forget Dad? Or did you forget Granddad? Or did you forget yourself? Go to besthotgrill.com. That's where you shop for Dad or Granddad or anyone in your family who grills. BestHotGrill.com is the home of the Solaire Infrared Grill. 0 to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. It is America's best grill. It is made in America by our friends Rhett and Irene in a family business that's been running for decades and decades and decades. I got one here on the East Coast. I got one on the West Coast. Dwayne's got one. BestHotGrill.com. Why? Because you want the very best. You want your food to taste the best. And if you got a client or somebody else and you've forgotten, you just didn't do it, just take the website, besthotgrill.com, print off a picture of the little one or the next one up or the third one, 4 or 5 if you're really going out to town, and just put it in a box and say, Best Hot Grill is arriving in January, and you're going to love it. That's the way to close the deal. That if you forgot a client and you're doing this and you got a dent in your head because you're hitting, run over to Best Hot Grill, get a Christmas card, print off the picture and say, this is coming in January. Thank you for your business. BestHotGrill.com, best grill around. Let me ask Dan, Minneapolis, last one on this topic. I got guests next hour. Dan, what do you think about your governor?
Hi, Hugh. Well, I think he needs to go ahead and retire, and I'm saying that in a little bit of distress, just because I would vote for him again. I voted for him last time if things were looking good here, but absolutely, it's a mess.
Did you get any money?
No, I didn't. But speaking of that, though, I am watching this closely, and the total amount so far is a little under $1 billion, though.
Now look, you're acting United States attorney, who's a career federal prosecutor.
That's right.
I looked him up. Thompson.
He said 9.
He said
yeah,
9.
He said 9. I know he
so
did, but that's for political reasons, because he's also
no, he's not political. He's the acting assistant. He's a career federal prosecutor who went to Stanford. He is not a political appointee. The new guy named Dan Rosen is the political appointee. But Mr. Thompson, who took all the slings and arrows, that's a Trump guy. He's a good guy. He's just a career criminal prosecutor, and he says he looks into it and he sees a bottomless pit of fraud. And he's the guy who said at least half of the $18 billion.
Yeah.
That's why $9 billion is safe.
Yeah, it's absolutely a problem. Yeah, and we need some new people there in power. But anyway, it's maybe, let's say for right now, it's a couple $1 billion. That's been proven. Not quite over $1 billion has been proven, and maybe he knows something that we don't yet.
Yeah, U.S. attorneys tend to do that. Yep, federal prosecutors tend to know what they're talking about. They don't throw numbers around. But Dan, I appreciate the call. Merry Christmas to you. I'm sorry you didn't get any money. I think everyone in Minnesota who didn't get any money should be asking each other, why didn't we get any money? A good Tuesday to you. To chilly inside the Beltway. I don't know what it's like in Israel, but we'll soon find out because we're joined by Dr. Michael Oren. He is the president of the Israel Advocacy Group, and that's at israeladvocacygroup.org.
Yeah.
I'll ask him about that in just a minute. Did I get it right, Dr. Oren?
You got it right. Thank you.
I'm glad. Now you have to tell us what it does. What does the IsraelAdvocacyGroup.org do?
The Advocacy Group was founded under very austere circumstances around my kitchen table on October 8th, 2023, the day after October 7th, to defend Israel from the media, in all forms of the media, internationally. And it also is involved in what's known as Track 2 diplomacy, where I will represent an Israeli view to governments and organizations around the world who want to hear an Israeli view, an independent Israeli view. And since then, we have, as you know, including many, many times on the Hugh Hewitt show, literally thousands of interviews worldwide, and op-eds, and a weekly Substack called Clarity, which you know. I also have a weekly column in the Israeli major daily called Yediot, and writing for the Free Press, which is a great honor for me.
So, Ambassador, I got to ask you a little inside baseball. I do 3 hours a day of radio and television for Salem. And then I do hits for Fox whenever they ask, like earlier today I was on. And, it's a lot. I get tired and I write 3 columns a week. You do like 10 times as much media as I do. And you do it all night long and you do it in different time zones. Does it make you, in the last 2 years, have been a time of grieving, loss, war, stress, get to the shelter? Are you worn out?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I'm also, as you know, I'm writing now probably a 2-volume book about this war, which will come out in the coming years. And I write 5 or 6 hours a day just writing. Listen, it helps to believe profoundly in what I do, to have a great honor in defending the state of Israel, the people of Israel, and what I believe is Western civilization. Tell you very frankly, it hopes to have a great wife, Tammy, who during those many hours, your prime time is our 2-3 o'clock in the morning. She gets up at 1 o'clock in the morning and sets it all up and makes sure I have a cup of coffee and my makeup is ready. And we do it literally under fire with rockets going on overhead. So, truly, as the wife of Lester B. Pearson, the great former Prime Minister of Canada, when Canada had great prime ministers, she used to say, behind every successful man stands a surprised woman. So that's my wife.
Let me ask you, Americans who are listening to this, they know Ambassador Oren for years. He's been coming on my program probably as long as it's been on. It's the 25th and a half year that we've been doing this. And so he was originally the ambassador from Israel to the United States when he started doing this. Then he went in the Knesset. Then he was the deputy minister. And then he came out and he kept doing it. Can Americans support the Israel Advocacy Group? And if so,
Yes,
does
of course
it
they
qualify as tax exempt?
It is indeed. And you can go online and look up IAG, Israel Advocacy Group. I'm there. You can also access the Israel Advocacy Group through the Substack Clarity. So please, your support would be very deeply appreciated.
I think that is a great thing for people at the year end when they're writing their checks and making their deductions and making sure they're as generous as they have been graced over the course of the year, that they keep the IsraelAdvocacyGroup.org in mind. Now, Ambassador Oren, tough question. I learned this week that if you did it the old way, the Commission of Inquiry into the failure of 10/7 would be selected by the Chief Justice of the Israeli Supreme Court, who is not, by anyone's estimate, a neutral party. They're involved in this. You can't let them run this because the controversy over the court is, in fact, part of the argument about unpreparedness. Does everyone understand that in Israel? I'm not saying who should run it, but there's a conflict there with the Supreme Court justice.
No, not everybody understands that. I do. I mentioned that I had this weekly column in Yediot, but that column was translated into English, and it's on the Clarity Substack. And what I say is it's important to have, it's crucial, let's stress this, crucial to have a state inquiry. A politically appointed board of inquiry will not satisfy much of the Israeli public. It just won't. And having the government investigate itself, it just won't wash. But there's no reason why you can't have a truly independent state inquiry board made up of very esteemed people, figures in Israeli society, from the right, the left, religious and secular, women and men. In this article, I name about 6 or 7 of them who could form that committee right off the bat and who are not identified with any camp. So you can keep the Supreme Court out of this. You can keep the Supreme Court justice out of this, certainly the president out of this. You can keep the attorney general out of this and still have, I think, a very objective state inquiry. As of tonight, though, the government is saying that inquiry, the politically appointed inquiry, will then examine, going back to the Oslo Accords of 1993, certainly the Israeli disengagement from Gaza in 2005. And I'm reading this and thinking, why don't we just go back to the Garden of Eden and who ate that apple?
Well, yeah, my old boss at the White House, Fred Fielding, when I was an assistant counsel in the Reagan White House, Fred Fielding was on his first tour of duty as White House counsel, and he would come back again under W. But he was a member of the 9/11 Commission, which was evenly divided Republicans and Democrats, and they would never go anywhere in uneven numbers. So if a Republican went to speak somewhere, a Democrat had to go. If a Democrat wanted to go here, a Republican had to go. At the end of the day, they had to go way back. They had to go back to the wall between Intel and intelligence and crime fighting between the FBI and the CIA. So they did have to go back in time, but it's possible to put together a commission, not of elder statesmen. I mean, some of them can be 75, but of people who are genuinely understood to be fair. Who would be the prime mover to get that going?
Well, you could appoint an ombudsman who could make that type of appointment, or even a committee that could make those type of appointments. But the committee has to be composed of people who are perceived to be objective and neutral. The committee that is appointing the government's investigative inquiry are people from the extreme right. It's Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and some other people. And if there's ever a committee that is designed to disaffect a large segment of the Israeli population, it's this committee.
Well, I can understand that because I think right now what Israel objectively needs is a report that not only Israelis accept, but the world accepts as to what happened and why on 10/7. And it's really not a political question only of interest to Israelis, though it's overwhelmingly primarily of interest to Israelis. Everyone's got to be able to read it and say, yep, that's what happened. Is that understood in Israel?
Not sufficiently. Matter of fact, that argument you just made, I don't think I've heard from any Israeli official, and it's a very compelling one. But Israel is different than the United States. Let that be said, Hugh. This is a country where no one's above the law. No one's above the law, and politicians have to take personal responsibility. There was a 9/11 report, but no one resigned as a result of 9/11. No one was fired. Hey, no one was fired because of Pearl Harbor. It's a very different society. When we had a less than successful war against Hezbollah in 2006, the defense minister was forced to resign. The chief of staff was forced to resign. Ultimately, the government fell. So this country, when these reports, there's a lot at stake here, and I understand the prime minister understands that this report could be politically existential for him. Hence, he has given it such immense weight. But having said that, you are absolutely right. We cannot move beyond October 7th. We cannot heal, nor can we truly begin to rebuild our foreign relations, which have been impaired by this war, until we have this type of objective, dispassionate to the degree that can be dispassionate inquiry.
Am I correct? Last question. My assessment from afar, and I don't know much about a lot, is that the prime minister does not have a chance of remaining prime minister except as a interim prime minister, unless he gets buy-in from everyone on the commission of inquiry. In other words, he can't make it a partisan commission of inquiry, or he'll get blown out whenever the elections happen in the next year, right?
No, because in a way that's very similar to the United States, Netanyahu, like President Trump, has a very solid base. And it will always vote for him. I happen to live in one of those neighborhoods where he has a very solid base. You don't say anything against the prime minister in my neighborhood. And they will come out and vote for him irrespective of what this commission finds or doesn't find, or what its composition will be. And so I assume he's going to run again in October, and he will be a very competitive candidate, indeed. So that's the answer to that. Do I have a minute?
Well, then, yeah, you got a minute. Go.
Let me a minute. First of all, from all of us here, from my family, from certainly the people at the Israel Advocacy Group, my very committed staff here, we want to wish you, your family, to all your listeners who are among our Christian supporters, we want to wish you a very peaceful, joyous, luminous Christmas. We just concluded Hanukkah here 2 days ago, and I'm always reminded that if those Maccabees hadn't won 2,800 years before, 2,168 years before Christmas, and preserved the Jewish state, Jesus would may have been born somewhere else, and maybe Christmas would look different. So because of Hanukkah, you get Christmas. We'll take credit for it, but we really wish you all the happiest of holidays.
Thank you, Michael. We'll talk in the new year, Mr. Ambassador. The IsraelAdvocacyGroup.org, IsraelAdvocacyGroup.org, IsraelAdvocacyGroup.org. Good to talk to you, Ambassador. We've got less than 48 hours till Santa arrives, so the countdown has begun. Noah Rothman, thank you for visiting with me on the 23rd. Nothing going on anywhere in America. I'm sure there's nothing to do in a house full of kids. There's just absolutely nothing to wrap, nothing your wife needs any help with. I'm glad you... I hope I gave you an excuse. First off, I'm kind of floored by the 4.3% GDP. I know we might have some hinky numbers here, but it's nothing that anybody was expecting. How did you react to it?
Same. Yeah, I was not expecting anything north of 3%, much less 4%. And yeah, I would not be surprised by some pretty significant revisions in any direction. We got as much when we got a CPI number last week that was pretty good, and the administration was very happy about it. But accompanying that is, well, there was the government shutdown. It was difficult to conduct surveys, and expect revisions. So expect revisions, but I would be surprised if they were so dramatic as to suggest that the United States didn't experience some pretty significant growth in the third quarter, and that's all good.
Now, I want people to remember what John Ellis, who is usually on this program on Fridays, likes to say is there is a one-time massive CapEx expenditure akin to a federal stimulus with the amount of money being put by private companies into AI data centers. And it's one time, and it's not going to recur. It just so happens to be going on this year and next, Noah. And boy, oh boy, that helps the economy grow.
It certainly does, but as you say, it's not sustainable. And there's been a lot of speculation that AI as not as a product, but as a concept, is overvalued, and that there could be a correction, and that correction could be significant. Yeah, I think that's something to be concerned about. But I don't necessarily foresee a condition in which AI as a product ceases to generate revenue and ceases to be something that companies and just about every major industry integrates into its operations. So while it may be overvalued in terms of as an investment product, as an investment vehicle, it's not something that's ever going to go away, and a correction wouldn't be a collapse. So
It sounds like you listened to David Bahnsen. David Bahnsen was on the show earlier talking about.
Well, that's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, but it sounds like you did, but I know you didn't. David always talks about the AI bubble, and he's warned it. And I think people there will be winners, but there will be losers. And if you're in a loser, it's going to hurt. Now, let me turn to the other thing, the headline in the Wall Street Journal. U.S. moves troops and additional special operations aircraft into the Caribbean. Now, Noah, you and I probably have a constitutional disagreement because I think he can do this without an authorization for the use of military force based upon precedents and the Supreme Court's language, which is vague in any case. The only thing Congress can do is cut off money or put riders on like they did with the Contras. But whether or not it's constitutional, do you think it's a good idea to topple Maduro, to go in and go out with Maduro in a couple of cups on his way to trial like Noriega 30 years ago?
Well, here's the problem, Hugh. We skipped all the way to the ending, which is a happy ending. And yes, I would love to see that happy ending in which Maduro is gone, Venezuelans are liberated, and the country that was once the richest country in South America rejoins the global marketplace, establishes a more liberal social covenant and allows Venezuelans to thrive, and no longer threatens the geopolitical situation in the Caribbean for the United States. That would be very desirable from my perspective. What's hinky about it, and yes, let's put the constitutional questions aside, and yes, we do have a substantive disagreement about that, both legally and prudentially. I think this administration will regret not going to the American people if it engages in a regime change operation in Venezuela. That aside, the enemy gets a vote. There's no kinetic campaign that goes precisely according to plan. And the posture that we have in the Caribbean is designed to execute airstrikes, pretty substantial airstrikes, with some limited ground operations by special forces. But the notion here being that if you just push on this rotten edifice a little bit and you can topple it with an air campaign, yeah, I've heard that before, and I'm very skeptical that you can achieve those kind of sweeping strategic aims with a tactic like air power alone. This administration, hopefully, I don't think it can slink away from this. I think it has to engage in this campaign now, otherwise American prestige is on the line. But if it doesn't have a posture that can maneuver in a way that, let's say the air campaign goes 30 days, do you have a ground component to it that's much larger than the footprint you would have with special forces? That's something this administration will have to consider. And if it does, it will have to change its rhetoric around this in ways that I think the American public will find disconcerting, especially if the administration doesn't go to the public with some sort of an effort to enlist the American people in this national project.
Now, Noah, this is a prediction, and I don't know anything. I think when I talk to you in the new year, because I'm off next week, when I talk to you in the new year, nothing will have changed. I don't think we're doing a Christmas time Maduro nab. I do think the second order impacts, I've been cautioned by military people, why don't you ever think about second order impacts? One of those second order impacts is Cuba is close to falling apart. The Journal covered it over the weekend, and I followed it for a long time. They are out of gas. I mean, literally out of gas. Do you think that this is really about Cuba and not, or at least about Cuba, and people aren't paying attention to that?
Yeah, I think it's about a lot of things. I think it's about the geopolitical orientation of Maduro and Chavez's Venezuela. They subsidized the Cuban regime, which has been a thorn in America's side for 70 years in many ways, and in destabilizing the geopolitical situation in sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, and as well as Venezuela's relationship with China and Russia, all of which have the same relationship with Cuba. We're talking about a nexus of anti-American powers that have disagreements with one another, but all of that gets pushed to the back burner when their consideration is their shared objective, which is toppling the U.S.-led world order. But it's also about immigration. It's also about drug trafficking. It's also about destabilizing the triangle in Central America and migrants moving north into the United States, which destabilizes the United States and its economy. There are myriad problems with the socialist regime in Venezuela, to say nothing of the fact that it is illegitimate and unloved. It's not just one thing, it's many things. And to be sure, the day after Maduro collapses will be a better day for the region and for Venezuelans. Getting there could be a tricky enterprise.
Now, here's my last second order impact. I don't think we will, in reality, lose moral high ground, but I believe the bot farms will say, why can't China invade Taiwan and Russia invade Ukraine if the United States can invade Venezuela and or Cuba or whatever? Do you think we're prepared to swat that down and make the argument, we go, we come, we leave?
Well, we can, and we can make a moral case for American military power in the region that is not that certainly doesn't license a land grab like what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine or what China is envisioning in Taiwan. They're just not comparable situations because we're talking about not a colonial enterprise, rather, but a mission of liberation. But that argument would be buttressed so much more if the proper legal channels were followed here. If the administration went to a Republican-controlled Congress and insisted, Congress had the opportunity to vote on this and just swatted it down. When Congress does not act, it is acting. It is saying we do not authorize something, not affirmatively authorizing it by default.
That's bad con law. That's bad con law, but we'll talk about that in 2026. No, when they don't say anything, you're in the middle zone, the gray zone, as Justice Jackson would say. They have to actually assert no. Noah, always great to talk to you. Have a great Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'll talk to you in 2026. I'm very, very grateful to Admiral Mark Montgomery, retired United States Navy, senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, because we got him for a short react to President Trump's announcement of the Golden Fleet, which, of course, is an echo of the Great White Fleet of Teddy Roosevelt 100 years ago. And what I'm hoping to get out of this, Admiral, I don't know anything about ship sizes, but I want them to build some graving docks that we haven't got. Do you think that's the first step? We can't build a new fleet without new capacity for building ships, can we?
You know, you're exactly right, Hugh. The industrial capacity doesn't exist for these kind of large surface combatants or battleships, as the president calls it, that's coming. That's one of a number of problems. I do want to say up front, though, the president's impulse is correct. His impulse that we need to invest in the Navy, invest in shipbuilding, invest in the maritime industrial base, if we're going to compete with China over the next 30 years, is exactly correct. I'm going to tell you I have a lot of problems with the implementation plan. I think many others do as well. But his impulse is right. And that's what you need from the president, impulse. What you need from his underlings is an implementation plan, and they owe him a good one.
Now, in terms of implementation plan, we don't have capacity. Do we need to expand existing shipyards or build new ones? I was talking to someone in the shipping industry yesterday. I said, right now is the time to go ask to build a new yard in Delaware or Maryland or some blue state so you can add a couple of senators. They didn't even know that Scoop Jackson used to be called the senator from Boeing.
That's right. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, one of the great good things in the Golden Fleet rollout was the support ships. There's a discussion of them in there. You know, when we had a 600-ship Navy, we had 200 support ships. Now we're down to 40 or 50. That's one of the reasons we don't have enough ships, is we don't have enough support ships. These are the oilers, the ammo ships, hydrographic ships, hospital ships, fleet tugs, all that stuff. And what I love in this is it says, look, we're going to attack this smartly. We're not going to go to the existing shipyards. We're going to go to new in America shipyards, bring in probably Korean know-how, American investment, and build those support ships there. And that way not put a drain on the very limited warship industrial base that exists at the 4 or 5 traditional shipyards you and I talk about routinely.
Now, Admiral, am I right, though? Would it not make sense to try and find a way to invest in a state shipbuilding capacity if that state doesn't currently have it, because then you expand the members of Congress who are interested in this vital national security segment of the industry?
That's exactly. You're right. In fact, the states I'd mentioned there are Florida. Pennsylvania's already getting on the bandwagon. Florida. Oregon, Washington, there's some work going up there. Louisiana already has some going on, but more. Yeah, you can bring in more state. In the end, the state generally has to be on a Great Lake or on the Atlantic or Pacific coast. You're not gonna get a big shipyard built in Arkansas, but outside of that, I think you can do a lot of work here.
So I was spitballing yesterday. I'll throw it at you. Wilmington has got a pretty big harbor. I don't know if they have any shipyard capacity. I don't think they do. But I'd love to bring in Delaware senators. And in Maryland, Baltimore is a big harbor. Do we build anything in Baltimore?
So there are big harbors, particularly Baltimore. It is not it doesn't have the kind of graving yards you've talked about it. It's got a little bit of work, a little bit of area for maintenance of some of the ships that come in. So there'd have to be the investment. And I think that's what you're talking about here. Someone has to have vision and say, I'm gonna put in state money, argue for federal money, and then work with the couple Korean yards, Hanwha and Hyundai, and Japanese yards, and even some, the Finns are helping us build icebreakers at American yards now.
Right.
So there's even European game in this. The answer, because that's where the know-how is, the tech. I was going to be honest with you. The Koreans can build the same ship as us for 30% of the cost. A little bit of that's labor cost. A lot of that is know-how and policies and processes they use.
Last question, Admiral. We have seen the remote manufacturing now. Has that come yet to shipbuilding where you can use 3D to actually get the components on site in real time? Has that made it to shipbuilding, or is it still to find a set of sequencing that you've got to follow?
So what I would say is adaptive manufacturing, with 3D printing, other things, is really starting to dominate like munitions. And that's where I know you and I have talked about it in the past. There is actual money in the big, beautiful bill to develop that capability and capacity at U.S. yards. The answer to the question is yes, but in Korean yards and in Japanese yards, not so much in American yards. There's some of it in American yards, but it's not predominant.
Well, Admiral Montgomery, we will continue talking about this in 2026. I want to thank you for a year's service to this audience, keeping them smart, and I appreciate your time. Happy New Year, Admiral. You know I have been telling you all week about podcasts that I love as we go into the new year to add to your list. One of those is Breaking History. Eli Lake, the host, is back with us. He's a contributor to the Free Press. He's often on the Commentary podcast. And he does a marvelous job with the Breaking History podcast, especially the latest edition, Tough Jews. Now, Eli, I'm going to let you sum this up, but I want everyone to realize that the phrase, "this is the business we've chosen," is used by more television journalists than I can tell you. This is, when things go wrong, this is the business we've chosen. We can't complain. That's Hyman Roth in The Godfather, who's based on Meyer Lansky, about whom I learned more from Eli this week than I ever knew. Eli, it's fabulous. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Hugh. I had it was a labor of love. Thank you so much. The episode is about how in the 1930s, there was a decision that was made by prominent, I should say, kind of Jewish establishment figures, Rabbi Stephen Wise and Nathan Perlman, who was a Republican congressman and a judge. And by the way, this is all based on Lansky. We only have that source, so we should just make that clear. And asked probably the biggest, most notorious gangster, at least Jewish gangster of the era, which is Meyer Lansky, one of the founding fathers of organized crime in America, to gather some of his guys and begin physically disrupting meetings of the American Bund on the East Coast. Other Jewish gangsters, which is that we didn't get into as much in the episode, did this in Minneapolis and Chicago and Los Angeles, but Lansky was sort of the big one. And it's really the story of kind of this decision that trying to stop American Nazis outside of the law. I've always been fascinated by the story. I think we did a good job with it, and it raises, I think, a lot of parallels today because we are seeing anti-Semitic violent incidents kind of cresting, and sadly, it's a trend right now in America and the West. We just saw the Bondi Beach a few weeks ago massacre. So, is there a potential for the Jewish community to take matters into their own hand? And I think it's a complicated question. I don't necessarily think we should follow Lansky's lead, but on the other hand, I think it's an important kind of piece of history to bring back to life.
Eli, years ago, both of my boys, when they were in high school, they would lifeguard at a Jewish community center. And one of them was there when an alert went off, and all of a sudden, out popped the Uzis, down came the barriers. I mean, this place was wired for security, but it had been built with a lot fairly recently. It's not a shoal in a remote town somewhere. I really don't know how you do it unless the police commit to treating assault like assault. Assault is the unpermitted, unlawful approach of a touching. You're putting imminent fear of an unpermitted touching. That's a crime, and they have to start enforcing it.
I agree with you, and I think that there are good relationships with the police in a lot of big cities right now in the Jewish community. It's a different world than it was in the 1930s. There was still institutional bias against not just Jews, but Irish Catholics. I mean, you can go down the list, of course, blacks. So we had a different country because of that. And also we had a different country because big city police departments were fairly corrupt in that era. There were efforts to try to reform it with guys like Dewey in New York. But the sort of local gangster, in some ways, was the law in a lot of the ethnic neighborhoods in New York City, Baltimore, Boston, Philadelphia. So it was a different world. And in that world, I can understand the argument about how we don't want to let this new American Bund begin, to intimidate Jews, especially during the darkness in Europe, which is the late 30s and Kristallnacht and all of that. So I understand it. I just found it a fascinating kind of thing, but it also kind of comes from a real emotional place. I watch the videos of Bondi, but also I watch just the mob actions in front of synagogues, like at Park East Synagogue a month ago, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, there's got to be a way for just people to sort of get in the face of the people who are blocking the way to a synagogue, stopping Jews from worshiping in their temple. And we're not such an easy target, get out of here, form a cordon or something.
It is, we do have a very robust First Amendment law, but you cannot permit, you can't restrict access, you can't interfere with people's free exercise, and you cannot threaten to assault them and put them in fear of an imminent injury. It's simply a crime. Eli, I'll tell you off air as well. I thought it was so fabulous. I came home and said to my wife after I'd been out listening to the thing, this really hit me, unlike a lot of them, because the old gentleman's agreement, which you brought up, was the old country club anti-Semitism. And I think when we say anti-Semitism, I want to know if you agree with this, a lot of Americans default to the gentleman agreement stuff. They don't know about the new stuff, and the new stuff is completely different from that.
Yes, and I think the new stuff I think the framework for the new stuff is really on the left, which is it's the idea that Israel is an illegitimate settler colonial state, and anybody who supports Israel is therefore like somebody who would, it's the inversion. It's like the Jewish state are the new Nazis, and you have an obligation to be rude to them, to tear down the hostages, the posters of missing hostages. All of those kinds of things that people who are pursuing it are doing it with a kind of moral fervor that isn't really there with the gentleman's agreement era. And it, I think, puts the Jewish community in a real bind because, I mean, to be honest, that world where a lot of these very progressive ideas for a long time, was a kind of new order that allowed not just Jews, but lots of other minorities in our country to be able to have no barrier to their success. I believe a lot of those ideas have curdled now, and it's just bad for America at this point.
It's terrible for America.
Yeah, I believe we should fight it politically by electing candidates who will, as the Trump administration has done, dismantle DEI. That's very good. But we have to understand that this is the new ideology of these institutions, and the kind of the bitter irony is that if you would have said 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, universities were some of the most welcoming places for Jewish Americans, and now I think there are a lot of them. The elite ones are hostile.
And Eli, I want to take the opportunity to wish you a Happy New Year as well, because I probably won't talk to you until 2026. But I hope you do an episode on FDR's and his State Department's hostility to Jewish immigration in the 30s. It's a story I know, but I don't think a lot of Americans know.
I agree.
So maybe down the line. Eli Lake on X and Breaking History, wherever podcasts are found. Thank you, Eli. We're still out there asking you to contribute to Angel Tree because it still matters. We can take care of kids today. Because of this audience, more than 4,000 children are going to be getting the Angel Tree treatment, which means they'll hear from mom or dad who are in jail. They'll get a letter from them along with a present from them, along with a Bible and a connection to the Angel Tree Volunteer Network through no fault of their own. They don't have to be alone. Just listen to George Carter from Prison Fellowship.
It's so important that the community gets involved in something like this because these kids, they're the innocent ones. They're not the ones that committed crimes. It was their parents. And so they already feel just pain, the loss of a parent that's not there. And to be connected with someone who represents their parent really means a lot. I mean, it means the world to these kids.
It does mean the world to these kids, and thank you for everything that you've done, and you can still do more. If you've been meaning to call in a $30 donation for another child, 888-206-2764, 888-206-2764, or just go over to HughHewitt.com. Let me close by also telling you, not a lot of people buy houses at this time of year, but you should, because it's really a buyer's market right now because there's not much going on out there. So if you walk in and you make an offer and you can back it up with a letter saying you've been approved for this loan, not merely it's been underwritten, it's all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, you'll get the house. You'll get the house you want because not a lot of people are out there looking right now. They're busy doing Christmas and New Year's. So AndrewandTodd.com, sponsors for, I don't know how many years, but thousands of you have used AndrewandTodd.com with Union Home Mortgage. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. And I say it 3 times. I also say go to AndrewandTodd.com. Go to AndrewandTodd.com. Because it's easy to remember if you've listened to me for a long time. But I wanted to close the show today by telling you about this because right now is the buyer's market of buyer's market through about mid-January. You show up, someone's trying to sell their house, they're going to be really open to you. But they're going to be really open to you if you're broker and you show up with pre-approval, underwritten, guaranteed loan. Whether you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, they can underwrite that. Whether you're a first-time home buyer and you only want to put down so much and the FHA backs it up and you're going to pay mortgage insurance, they can do that. Maybe you want a 15-year mortgage. Maybe you want to do 50% cash down or 20%, whatever it is. AndrewandTodd.com. They've been doing this for decades and decades. They did my mortgage and the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt when we moved back here. They did Dwayne's. They've done a lot of people in the Salem network, and they've done thousands of customers, including refinances, by the way. 1 out of 2 loans these days having to do with homes are refinancing of the debt, and they're rolling debt into it. Credit card, student loan, car loan. The story in the Wall Street Journal today on the modern car loan makes your eyes roll back in your head. Don't do that. Call AndrewandTodd.com. It's easier to get the money out of your house at 6% or a little bit less than to pay a 100-month mortgage, that 100-month car payment. That's crazy. AndrewandTodd.com, AndrewandTodd.com. I'll be back tomorrow on Christmas Eve, America. Talk to you then.